50 million people watched the video in just 6 hours. A pregnant influencer, slapped by her billionaire husband at a charity gala in front of Manhattan's elite. But what those 50 million viewers didn't know was that this wasn't just domestic violence. It was the beginning of the largest human trafficking investigation in FBI history. Tori Sterling thought she had the perfect life: 2 million Instagram followers, designer everything, and marriage to one of America's most powerful tech moguls. But behind the marble countertops and private jets was a web of cryptocurrency crime, political corruption, and exploitation that would shock the world. This is the story of how one viral moment brought down a billion-dollar criminal empire, and how a woman who lost everything found the strength to save hundreds of lives. But I have to warn you, once you hear what Marcus Sterling was really doing with his cryptocurrency fortune, you'll never look at social media the same way again. The video had 50 million views in 6 hours. Tori Sterling stood frozen in her marble kitchen, watching herself get slapped across the face by her billionaire husband at last night's charity gala. The sound echoed through her phone speaker like a gunshot. "How did we get here?" she whispered to her reflection in the black screen. The hashtag Justice for Tori was trending worldwide, but Tori knew the truth was far more complicated than a viral moment could capture. She placed her hand on her 6-month pregnant belly and felt the baby kick, as if responding to her mother's distress. Marcus Sterling had built his empire on cryptocurrency and careful image management. At 45, he was worth $12 billion and controlled every aspect of their seemingly perfect life. Tori's Instagram account boasted 2 million followers who envied her designer clothes, luxury vacations, and fairy tale marriage to one of America's most powerful tech moguls. But fairy tales don't usually involve prenatal vitamins that make you feel foggy, or husbands who monitor every phone call and delete comments from old friends. The kitchen door opened, and Marcus walked in wearing his usual morning uniform, a $1,000 sweater, and an expression of controlled irritation. He poured himself coffee from their $15,000 espresso machine without acknowledging her presence. "The PR team is handling the video," he said finally, his voice flat. "They're framing it as a misunderstanding. You stumbled. I reached out to steady you. The angle makes it look worse than it was." Tori stared at him. "Marcus, you slapped me in front of 300 people. I corrected you." He took a sip of coffee, still not looking at her. "You were about to embarrass us both." The memory rushed back like a wave. She had been standing beside Marcus at the Metropolitan Museum, listening to investigative journalist Chase Hamilton expose corruption in the tech industry. When Chase mentioned cryptocurrency being used to fund illegal activities, Tori had felt compelled to speak up, to distance herself from whatever Marcus might be involved in. That's when Marcus's hand had connected with her face. "Chase Hamilton is a fraud," Marcus continued, scrolling through his phone. "His little expose last night was full of unsubstantiated claims. The man's been trying to destroy successful people his entire career." Tori's stomach lurched, but not from morning sickness. Chase Hamilton had been her college boyfriend, the man she'd planned to marry before Marcus swept into her life with promises of security and stardom. She'd never told Marcus about their relationship, and seeing Chase last night had triggered emotions she'd buried for 5 years. "Elena is coming over this morning," Tori said, needing to change the subject. "We're planning content for next week." Marcus finally looked up from his phone. "Cancel it. You need to stay out of the public eye until this blows over." "I can't just disappear." "Marcus, my followers expect regular content." "Your followers," he repeated with a slight smile that never reached his eyes, "will understand that pregnant women need rest." The way he said it made Tori's skin crawl. Everything about her social media presence was carefully orchestrated by Marcus's team. They chose her outfits, approved her captions, even selected which comments she could respond to. Sometimes she wondered if any of her success was actually hers. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena Rodriguez, her manager and closest friend. "Saw the video? Are you okay coming over in an hour?" Before Tori could respond, Marcus plucked the phone from her hands. "I'll handle Elena," he said. "You should rest." As he walked away, Tori caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. At 28, she still looked like the college graduate who'd fallen for Marcus's charm and financial security, but her eyes held a weariness that no amount of expensive skincare could hide. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Tori made a decision that would change everything. She was going to tell Elena the truth about her marriage. All of it. Elena Rodriguez arrived precisely on time. As always, she'd been managing Tori's social media empire for 3 years, turning a lifestyle blogger into a multi-million-dollar brand. But as she walked into the Sterling Mansion's pristine living room, Elena could see that something fundamental had shifted. "The internet is going insane," Elena said, setting down her laptop bag. "Your DMs are flooded with support messages, but there's also a lot of victim blaming. Some people are saying you deserved it for speaking out of turn." Tori winced. "Marcus wants me to disappear until it blows over." "Absolutely not." Elena's voice was sharp. "This is the perfect opportunity to show your authentic side. Your followers have only seen the polished version of your life. This could be your chance to connect with them on a deeper level." "Elena, there's something I need to tell you about my marriage." Before Tori could continue, Marcus appeared in the doorway. He moved silently, a habit that had always unnerved Tori. How long had he been listening? "Elena, good to see you," Marcus said with his public smile. "I was just telling Tori that she needs to take a break from social media." "Doctor's orders." Elena frowned. "Which doctor, Dr. Patterson didn't mention anything about restricting her activities when I spoke to him last week." "A specialist," Marcus replied smoothly. "Given the stress of last night's unfortunate incident, we think it's best if Tori focuses on her health and the baby." Tori watched the exchange, feeling like a spectator in her own life. This was how Marcus operated. He made decisions and everyone else fell in line. But Elena had always been different. She'd built her career on standing up to powerful men who tried to control her clients. "Tori, what do you think?" Elena asked directly. The question hung in the air. Tori could feel Marcus's eyes on her, could sense the subtle threat in his posture. But she also felt the baby moving inside her, reminding her that this wasn't just about her anymore. "I think," Tori said slowly, "that I need to tell my own story." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Darling, you're emotional right now. The hormones, the stress. Maybe Elena should come back next week when you're feeling more stable." The word stable hit Tori like ice water. It was the same word Marcus used whenever she questioned his decisions or expressed any independence. Unstable, hormonal, irrational. The labels that justified his control. "I'm perfectly stable," Tori said, standing up with more conviction than she'd felt in months. "Elena, I need to show you something." She led Elena upstairs to her private office, leaving Marcus standing alone in the living room. The office was the one space in the house that still felt like hers, filled with vision boards, photography equipment, and personal mementos from her life before Marcus. "Tori, what's going on?" Elena asked as soon as the door closed. "The man who spoke at the gala last night, Chase Hamilton. He's my ex-boyfriend. We dated for 2 years in college." Elena's eyes widened. "Does Marcus know?" "Nah, I don't think so. But Elena, what if Chase is right? What if Marcus is involved in something illegal?" Tori moved to her desk and pulled out a folder she'd been secretly compiling for months. Inside were printed emails, financial documents, and screenshots of conversations she'd overheard. "Marcus gets calls at weird hours," she continued. "He speaks in code about transactions and overseas partnerships. Last month, I found a phone hidden in his office with messages about something called Project Prometheus." Elena flipped through the documents, her expression growing more serious with each page. "Tori, if even half of this is true, you could be in real danger." "I know, but I don't know who to trust. Marcus has connections everywhere. Police, politicians, judges. And if I'm wrong, if I leave him over suspicions and paranoia, I'll lose everything. The house, the money, probably custody of the baby." Elena closed the folder and looked directly at Tori. "What do you want to do?" "I want to contact Chase. I want to know what he knows about Marcus. And I want to know if there's a way out of this marriage that doesn't destroy my life." "Okay," Elena said without hesitation. "I'll help you." Neither woman noticed the small recording device that Marcus had placed under Tori's desk 6 months earlier, or the fact that every word of their conversation was being transmitted to his phone downstairs. Chase Hamilton's apartment in Brooklyn was a far cry from the Sterling Mansion. Books overflowed from makeshift shelves. Investigative notes covered every wall, and the coffee maker was held together with electrical tape. But it was here, surrounded by the organized chaos of real journalism, that Chase felt most himself. His laptop showed the viral video for the 100th time. Seeing Marcus slap Tori had triggered something primal in Chase, a protective instinct he thought he'd buried when she chose Marcus over him 5 years ago. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown number. "This is Elena Rodriguez, Tori Sterling's manager. She needs to speak with you urgently. It's about your investigation into Marcus Sterling." Chase stared at the message for a full minute. He'd spent 2 years building a case against Marcus's cryptocurrency empire, following a paper trail that led from legitimate investments to money laundering operations across 3 continents. But he'd never imagined that Tori might be willing to help. 20 minutes later, Elena walked into the coffee shop Chase had suggested in Williamsburg. She looked exactly like her professional headshots, sharp, confident, and completely out of place among the Brooklyn hipsters. "Tori couldn't come," Elena explained as she sat down. "Marcus has been monitoring her movements since last night, but she wants you to know that she's been collecting evidence." Chase leaned forward. "What kind of evidence?" Elena slid a flash drive across the table. "Financial records, encrypted communications, meeting notes. She doesn't understand all of it, but she knows it's connected to your investigation." Chase plugged the drive into his laptop, his eyes widening as files populated the screen. Bank transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, encrypted emails discussing cargo shipments and inventory management. Most damning of all, a recorded phone conversation between Marcus and someone identified only as the senator. "How long has she been collecting this?" Chase asked. 6 months, ever since she started suspecting that her success wasn't real." "What do you mean?" Elena hesitated. "Marcus bought her followers. All of them. Tori thought she'd built this amazing brand through her own talent and hard work, but it was all manufactured. When she found out, she started questioning everything else about her life." Chase felt a familiar surge of anger. Marcus hadn't just stolen billions of dollars. He'd stolen Tori's sense of self-worth and accomplishment. "There's something else," Elena continued. "Tori's been feeling foggy and disoriented for months. She thinks Marcus might be drugging her." "Jesus!" Chase ran his hands through his hair. "Elena, if even half of this is true, Tori is in serious danger. Marcus has killed people who threatened his operation. Killed people. 3 of his business partners have died in accidents over the past 2 years. A car crash, a boating accident, and a suicide. All of them were preparing to testify against him in various investigations." Elena's face went pale. "We need to get her out of there." "It's not that simple. Marcus has connections everywhere. The FBI investigation into his cryptocurrency dealings mysteriously stalled last year when evidence disappeared from federal servers. Local police refused to investigate complaints against him, and he's got political protection." "Political protection?" Chase pulled up a photo on his laptop showing Marcus at a fundraising dinner. Senator Patricia Wells. She's been blocking congressional investigations into cryptocurrency regulation for years. In exchange, Marcus has contributed millions to her campaigns and her husband's business ventures. "So what do we do?" Chase closed his laptop and looked directly at Elena. "We use the one thing Marcus can't control: social media. Tori has 2 million followers who believe in her. If we can prove that Marcus has been manipulating her life, controlling her success, and possibly drugging her, we can turn public opinion so strongly against him that even his political allies won't be able to protect him. That's incredibly risky. If we're wrong, or if we can't prove everything, Marcus will destroy her." "Elena, I've been investigating Marcus Sterling for 2 years. I know he's guilty. The question is whether Tori is willing to take the risk to expose him." Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. Her face went white as she read it. "What is it?" Chase asked. "It's from Marcus. He knows about our meeting. He wants to see me at his office immediately." Chase felt ice form in his stomach. "Elena, don't go. If Marcus knows you're helping Tori, you could be in danger too. I have to go. If I don't show up, he'll know for certain that we're working together. But Chase, I need you to promise me something. If anything happens to me, if I disappear or have an accident, you need to protect Tori. She's 6 months pregnant and completely vulnerable." "Nothing's going to happen to you." Elena stood up, her professional composure cracking for the first time. "You don't know Marcus like I do. He doesn't just destroy his enemies. He destroys everyone they care about. As Elena walked away, Chase realized that their investigation had just become a race against time. Marcus knew they were coming for him, which meant he would do everything in his power to stop them, including eliminating the one person who could expose his crimes. Elena Rodriguez had built her career on managing crisis situations, but walking into Marcus Sterling's corporate headquarters felt like entering a lion's den. The 40-story glass tower in Manhattan's financial district was a monument to Marcus's power, and Elena knew that security cameras were tracking her every movement from the moment she entered the lobby. Marcus's office occupied the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of the city. When Elena entered, Marcus was standing with his back to her, apparently admiring the skyline. "Elena," he said without turning around, "thank you for coming so quickly." "Of course. Is everything okay?" Marcus finally turned, and Elena saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. It wasn't anger or suspicion. It was amusement, as if he was enjoying a private joke. "I have a proposition for you," Marcus said, gesturing for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "Tori's little outburst last night has created some complications for my business interests. I need someone I can trust to help manage the situation." Elena forced herself to remain calm. "What kind of management are you talking about? Tori has always been somewhat unstable. The pregnancy hormones have made it worse. I'm concerned that she might do something rash, something that could damage both our reputations." "Tori isn't unstable, Marcus. She's been under a lot of stress, but that's understandable given the circumstances." Marcus smiled, and Elena realized with growing horror that he was recording their conversation. A small device on his desk was blinking red. "Elena, I know you met with Chase Hamilton this morning." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd been so careful, had chosen a public location, had checked for surveillance. How could Marcus possibly know? "I don't know what you're talking about," she managed. Marcus pressed a button on his desk, and Tori's voice filled the room through hidden speakers. "I want to contact Chase. I want to know what he knows about Marcus. And I want to know if there's a way out of this marriage that doesn't destroy my life." Elena's heart sank as she heard her own response. "Okay, I'll help you. My wife has been very careless about where she has her private conversations," Marcus said, turning off the recording. "Apparently, she doesn't realize that her private office isn't as private as she thinks." Elena's mind raced. If Marcus had been recording Tori's conversations, he knew everything about their plan to expose him. But why was he sharing this information instead of simply eliminating the threat? "What do you want from me?" Elena asked. "I want you to continue helping Tori. I want you to meet with Chase Hamilton again. I want you to gather every piece of evidence they think they have against me. You want me to spy on them? I want you to protect your family." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Elena thought of her parents in Los Angeles, her younger brother finishing his medical residency, her 6-year-old niece who called her Tia Elena and sent her crayon drawings every week. "My family has nothing to do with this," Elena said quietly. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a photo that made her blood turn to ice. It was her brother Carlos leaving the hospital where he worked, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. "Your brother walks the same route to his car every night after his shift," Marcus said conversationally. "Very predictable habits. And your parents still live in that charming neighborhood in East LA where you grew up. Such a close-knit community. Everyone knows everyone." Elena felt tears forming in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't give Marcus the satisfaction of seeing her break. "What exactly do you want me to do? Continue building their case against me? Feed them documents. I'll provide authentic-looking forgeries that will ultimately discredit their investigation. Make them think they're getting close to exposing me, then ensure that their evidence disappears at the crucial moment. And if I refuse," Marcus's smile disappeared entirely. "Elena, 3 of my former business partners refused to cooperate with me. They all suffered tragic accidents. I would hate for your family to experience similar misfortunes." Elena realized she was trapped. If she helped Marcus, she would be betraying Tori and Chase. But if she refused, her family would pay the price for her principles. "I need guarantees," she said finally. "If I do this, you leave my family alone. Permanently." "Of course, I'm a businessman. Elena, I honor my agreements." "And what happens to Tori?" Marcus's expression softened slightly. which somehow made him even more terrifying. Tori is carrying my child. She'll be well cared for, even if our marriage doesn't survive her current instability. But she needs to understand that there are consequences for betraying the people who love her. Elena left Marcus's office feeling like she'd just signed a deal with the devil. But as she walked through the bustling streets of Manhattan, she began to formulate a desperate plan. Marcus thought he had outmaneuvered them, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated how far Elena was willing to go to protect the people she cared about, including risking everything to save Tori from the monster she'd married. The Metropolitan Museum's annual Technology Ethics Gala was the kind of event where billion-dollar deals were made over champagne and canapes. Tori Sterling stood in her walk-in closet, choosing between two designer gowns that cost more than most people's annual salaries. But her mind was focused on the plans she and Elena had carefully constructed. Tonight, Chase Hamilton would deliver his keynote address exposing corruption in the cryptocurrency industry. Marcus would be forced to defend himself publicly, and Tori would use the opportunity to gather more evidence against her husband. The black Valentino gown made her look like the perfect billionaire's wife, but the blue Oscar de la Renta had hidden pockets where she could conceal her phone with its new recording app. Elena had installed the software yesterday, along with a GPS tracker that would alert Chase if Tori was in danger. The blue one, she decided, running her hands over her 6-month pregnant belly. Mommy's going to protect us both tonight. Marcus appeared in the doorway, wearing his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, and Tori felt the familiar chill that came with his presence. Even after 5 years of marriage, she'd never gotten used to the way he could make her feel like prey, simply by looking at her. You look beautiful, he said, though his tone suggested he was commenting on a piece of artwork rather than his pregnant wife. Are you ready for tonight? Ready as I'll ever be. Marcus stepped closer, and Tori caught a whiff of his cologne mixed with something else, something medicinal that she'd been smelling more frequently lately. Tori, I need you to understand something about tonight. Chase Hamilton is going to make some very serious accusations. Some of them might even sound convincing. But I need you to remember that he's a failed journalist who's trying to make his career by destroying successful people. I understand. Do you? Because 5 years ago, you had feelings for this man. I need to know that those feelings won't cloud your judgment tonight. Tori's blood went cold. Marcus had never acknowledged knowing about her relationship with Chase, but the way he was looking at her now made it clear that he'd always known. That was a long time ago, Marcus. I chose you. Yes, you did. And I've given you everything you could ever want. A beautiful home, financial security, social status, a successful career. I hope you remember that when Hamilton tries to fill your head with lies about me. The way he said successful career made Tori's stomach turn. She still hadn't confronted him about buying her followers, but the knowledge sat in her chest like a stone. I should take my prenatal vitamins before we leave, she said, moving toward the bathroom. Already taken care of, Marcus replied, holding out a small cup with her usual evening supplements. Dr. Patterson adjusted your dosage yesterday. These will help with any anxiety you might feel tonight. Tori stared at the pills. For months, she'd been taking them without question, trusting that Marcus was helping her maintain a healthy pregnancy. But now she wondered what else might be in those innocent-looking capsules. Actually, I'm feeling fine tonight. I think I'll skip them. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Darling, Dr. Patterson was very specific about the dosage schedule. Missing even 1 day could affect the baby's development. 1 day won't matter. I'm afraid I have to insist. The words weren't spoken as a request or even a strong suggestion. They were a command, delivered with the quiet authority that Marcus used when he expected absolute obedience. Tori realized she was at a crossroads. She could take the pills and maintain the facade of being the compliant wife, or she could refuse and reveal that she was beginning to question everything about their marriage. The baby kicked, hard, as if urging her to make the right choice. No, Tori said quietly. I'm not taking them. For the first time in their 5-year marriage, Tori saw genuine surprise cross Marcus's face. It was quickly replaced by something far more dangerous. Tori, you're being irrational. The pregnancy hormones are affecting your decision-making. This is exactly why Dr. Patterson prescribed these medications. What medications? Marcus. What exactly is in these pills? Prenatal vitamins, calcium supplements, mild mood stabilizers to help with anxiety. Mood stabilizers, I never agreed to take mood stabilizers. Marcus set down the pill cup and moved closer to Tori, backing her against the bathroom vanity. Darling, you've been very stressed lately. Paranoid, even. You've been imagining threats that don't exist, questioning decisions we've made together. These medications are helping you think more clearly. Tori felt trapped between Marcus's body and the marble countertop, but for the first time in months, her mind felt completely clear. You've been drugging me. I've been caring for you. There's a difference. How long, Marcus? How long have you been putting mood stabilizers in my vitamins? Marcus smiled, and Tori realized that he was enjoying her discovery. Since our honeymoon, actually, you were so anxious about the wedding, about starting our new life together. The medications helped you adjust to your new circumstances. 5 years. Marcus had been medicating her without her knowledge for 5 years, controlling her moods, her thoughts, her ability to question his authority. You're insane, Tori whispered. I'm practical. And tonight, you're going to take your medication, we're going to attend the gala, and you're going to behave like the loving, supportive wife that you are. Because if you don't, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a video that made her legs go weak. It was security footage of Elena entering Chase Hamilton's apartment building yesterday, timestamp clearly visible. Your friend Elena has been very busy lately, Marcus said, meeting with journalists, sharing confidential information about our marriage, plotting against our family. I would hate for her career to be destroyed by allegations of corporate espionage. Tori realized that Marcus had been several steps ahead of them from the beginning. Their careful plan to expose him had been compromised before it even started. Now, Marcus continued, holding out the pills again, let's get ready for the gala. We have a big night ahead of us. The Metropolitan Museum's Great Hall glittered with Manhattan's elite, but Tori Sterling felt like she was walking through a minefield. Every step, every conversation, every smile for the cameras was carefully calculated to maintain the facade of her perfect marriage while she secretly documented evidence against Marcus. Chase Hamilton stood at the podium, commanding the attention of 300 of the most powerful people in America. Tori watched from her table near the front, her heart racing as he began his presentation about cryptocurrency corruption and money laundering schemes. Ladies and gentlemen, Chase said, his voice carrying clearly through the museum's acoustics. Tonight I want to talk about the dark side of digital currency and the billionaires who've turned financial innovation into a tool for human trafficking. Tori felt Marcus tense beside her. His hand found hers under the table, squeezing with enough pressure to remind her that he was watching her every reaction. Chase clicked to his first slide, showing a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. These transactions, totaling over $2 billion, represent the largest cryptocurrency-based money laundering operation in American history. The audience murmured with interest, but Tori could see several prominent politicians and business leaders shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Marcus's grip on her hand tightened. The mastermind behind this operation, Chase continued, has used legitimate business investments as cover for funding international crime syndicates, including organizations involved in human trafficking across Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe. Senator Patricia Wells, seated at the table behind them, leaned forward to whisper something in her husband's ear. Tori recognized the senator from Marcus's private dinner parties, though she'd never been included in their conversations. Chase's presentation continued with devastating precision, outlining financial records, encrypted communications, and witness testimonies that painted a picture of systematic criminal activity. But he never mentioned Marcus by name, instead referring to the individual at the center of this investigation. Tori realized this was her moment. If Marcus was truly guilty of the crimes Chase was describing, she needed to distance herself publicly before it was too late. The baby's future depended on her making the right choice. Marcus, she whispered, is any of this true? Of course not, he replied without looking at her. Hamilton is a conspiracy theorist trying to make headlines. But Tori could see sweat forming on Marcus's forehead despite the museum's air conditioning. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his wine glass. Chase clicked to a new slide showing a photograph of a young woman who couldn't have been older than 16. This is Maria Santos. She was trafficked from Honduras through an operation funded by cryptocurrency transactions. She's one of hundreds of victims whose suffering has generated profits for American businessmen. The image hit Tori like a physical blow. The girl looked terrified, hollow-eyed, barely older than a child. If Marcus was connected to this, if their luxury lifestyle was built on the suffering of people like Maria Santos, then Tori was complicit in unimaginable cruelty. "I need some air," Tori said, starting to stand. Marcus's hand clamped down on her wrist with bruising force. "Sit down." The command was delivered quietly, but several people at nearby tables turned to look. Tori could see phones appearing as guests began recording what looked like a domestic dispute at the Sterling table. "Marcus, you're hurting me. Sit down." Tori looked around the room and realized that dozens of phones were now pointed in their direction. Chase had stopped speaking and was staring directly at their table. The museum's atmosphere had shifted from polite attention to electric tension. "If I'm wrong about these allegations," Chase said, his voice carrying a new edge, "then the individual responsible for these crimes will have no problem submitting to a federal investigation. But if I'm right, then everyone in this room needs to ask themselves, what price are we willing to pay for our silence?" Tori felt something snap inside her chest. Whether it was 5 years of suppressed anger, the protective instincts triggered by her pregnancy, or simply the clarity that came from not taking Marcus's mood stabilizers, she found her voice. "Let go of me," she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Tori, stop making a scene. I said let go of me." She wrenched her arm free and stood up, her hand instinctively going to her belly. The room had gone completely silent, except for the clicking of camera phones recording every moment. "Is this about the cryptocurrency investigations?" Tori asked, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Marcus, tell me the truth. Are you involved in money laundering?" Marcus stood up slowly, his public smile sliding into place like a mask. But Tori could see the rage burning in his eyes. "Darling, you're having an episode. The pregnancy hormones are making you confused and paranoid. We should get you home so you can rest." The word episode sent ice through Tori's veins. It was the same language Marcus had been using for months to dismiss her concerns and questions, but now she understood that it was part of a larger pattern of gaslighting designed to make her doubt her own sanity. "I'm not having an episode," Tori said clearly. "I'm asking my husband a direct question about his business practices. Tori, please, are you funding human trafficking with cryptocurrency?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Tori could see Senator Wells frantically texting someone, could see security guards moving closer to their table, could see Chase Hamilton watching from the podium with an expression of admiration mixed with terror. Marcus's mask finally slipped completely. "How dare you," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "How dare you embarrass me like this in front of my colleagues and friends? You're carrying my child, and you're acting like a hysterical—" The slap came so fast that Tori didn't see it coming. Marcus's hand connected with her face with enough force to send her stumbling backward, her hands instinctively protecting her pregnant belly. The room erupted in gasps and shouts. Security guards rushed toward their table. Camera phones captured every angle of the moment that would define both their lives. But in the seconds after the slap, as Tori stood there with her hand pressed to her stinging cheek, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 5 years, complete clarity about who Marcus Sterling really was. The video went viral before Tori even made it home from the hospital. 50 million views in 6 hours, with hashtags like Justice for Tori and Billionaire Abuse trending across every social media platform. But sitting in her marble kitchen the next morning, watching herself get slapped on repeat, Tori felt like she was drowning in the aftermath of her own liberation. Marcus had spent the night at his downtown office, leaving Tori alone in their mansion for the first time in months. She'd disabled the security system's interior cameras, using a code Elena had discovered during her research. But she knew Marcus would realize what she'd done eventually. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, concerned friends, and strangers offering support. But the call she was waiting for came from Elena at 9 a.m. sharp. "Are you safe?" Elena asked without preamble. "For now. Marcus didn't come home last night. But Elena, he knows about our plan. He's been recording my conversations." "I know. We need to meet immediately. There's something I have to tell you about my conversation with Marcus yesterday." They arranged to meet at a small cafe in Queens, far from Manhattan's financial district where Marcus conducted his business. Tori wore oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, but she still felt exposed as she walked through the unfamiliar neighborhood. Elena was already waiting in a corner booth, her usual professional composure replaced by exhaustion and worry. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Tori, Marcus threatened my family," Elena said as soon as Tori sat down. "He wants me to spy on you and Chase, to feed you false information that will discredit your investigation." Tori felt her world tilt sideways. "Are you going to do it? I don't have a choice. He showed me surveillance photos of my brother, my parents. He made it clear that they would have accidents if I don't cooperate. So our plan is blown?" "Not necessarily." Elena pulled out a small device that looked like a hearing aid. "I've been thinking about this all night. What if we use Marcus's paranoia against him?" "What do you mean?" "This is a recording device with a live feed to Chase's laptop. Everything we say, everything Marcus says when he's around me, gets transmitted directly to Chase in real time. Marcus thinks I'm his double agent, but I'm actually your triple agent." Tori stared at the tiny device. "Elena, if Marcus finds out what you're doing, he'll kill you. If I don't try to help you, he'll eventually kill all of us anyway. Tori, I've seen the financial records. Marcus hasn't just been funding human trafficking. He's been eliminating anyone who threatens his operation. 3 people in the last 2 years." The weight of their situation settled on Tori like a physical burden. She was 6 months pregnant, trapped in a marriage to a man who was apparently a murderer, with no clear path to safety. "What does Chase think we should do?" "He's been building a federal case, but he needs more evidence. Specifically, he needs recordings of Marcus discussing his illegal activities. The problem is that Marcus is too smart to have those conversations over the phone or in places where he might be recorded. Except he doesn't think he can be recorded at home," Tori realized. "He controls all the security systems, all the devices. He would never suspect that I might be wearing a wire." Elena nodded grimly. "It's incredibly dangerous, but it might be our only option. If you can get Marcus to admit to his crimes while wearing this device, Chase can take the recording to the FBI contacts who haven't been compromised by Marcus's political connections." Tori thought about the video of her being slapped, about the 50 million people who had witnessed her humiliation. But she also thought about Maria Santos, the 16-year-old trafficking victim whose photograph had triggered the confrontation at the gala. "How do I get Marcus to confess?" "You make him angry. You threaten the thing he cares about most, his reputation and his control over you. Men like Marcus can't resist gloating when they think they've won. And if it doesn't work, if he realizes I'm recording him," Elena's expression was grave, "then you run. You take nothing except the clothes on your back, and you run as fast and as far as you can." As they left the cafe, Tori felt the weight of the recording device in her purse like a loaded gun. Tonight, she would either gather the evidence needed to put Marcus in prison, or she would trigger a confrontation that could end with her death. But for the first time in 5 years, she was going to fight back. Marcus returned home at midnight, moving through their mansion like a predator stalking familiar territory. Tori heard his footsteps on the marble floors from their bedroom, where she'd been waiting for hours with Elena's recording device hidden in her jewelry box. She'd spent the evening crafting her strategy. Marcus's greatest weakness was his ego, his need to be seen as the smartest person in any room. If she could make him believe that she was helpless and defeated, he might reveal the full scope of his criminal empire. The bedroom door opened quietly, and Marcus appeared in the doorway, still wearing his suit from the previous day. He looked exhausted, but there was a dangerous energy in his posture that made Tori's heart race. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Like my life is falling apart." Marcus moved to his dresser and began removing his cufflinks, a nightly ritual that Tori had watched thousands of times. But tonight, every movement seemed calculated and threatening. "The internet has been very unkind to me today," Marcus said conversationally. 50 million people have now seen me discipline my hysterical wife at a public event. My stock price dropped 8%, and I've received calls from very unhappy business partners." Tori slipped the recording device from her jewelry box into the pocket of her silk robe, praying that Marcus wouldn't notice her movements. "I'm sorry," she said, though the words tasted like poison. "I shouldn't have questioned you in public." Marcus turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. No, you shouldn't have. But I understand why you did it. Chase Hamilton is a very persuasive liar, and you've always been susceptible to manipulation. Was he lying about the money laundering and the trafficking? Marcus smiled, and Tori realized with growing horror that he was about to tell her the truth. Not because he trusted her, but because he wanted her to understand the full extent of his power. Chase Hamilton is actually a better investigative journalist than I gave him credit for, Marcus said, sitting down on the edge of their bed. His research was quite thorough. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the cryptocurrency transactions. He got most of the details right. Tori felt her blood turn to ice. So it's true you're really funding human trafficking. I'm funding profitable enterprises across multiple international markets. Some of those enterprises happen to involve the movement of people across borders. The specifics of how that movement occurs are not my concern. The casual way he discussed the exploitation of human beings made Tori feel physically sick. She thought about Maria Santos, about the hundreds of other victims whose suffering had funded their luxury lifestyle. Marcus, those are people, children. How can you talk about them like they're cargo? Because that's what they are. Commodities in a global market that generates billions of dollars annually. Tori, you've been living off those profits for 5 years. Your designer clothes, your jewelry, your social media empire, all of it was built on the foundation of my business relationships. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. I made sure you didn't know. I gave you just enough wealth and status to keep you happy. While I handled the complicated realities of international business, Marcus stood up and moved to their bedroom safe, entering a code that Tori had never been allowed to see. He removed a tablet computer and brought it back to the bed. Would you like to see how extensive my operation really is? He asked, opening files that showed financial records spanning multiple continents. Tori forced herself to lean closer, knowing that the recording device needed to capture every detail of Marcus's confession. These accounts in the Cayman Islands process about $50 million monthly, Marcus explained with obvious pride. The Hong Kong subsidiary handles logistics and transportation, and our political partnerships ensure that law enforcement investigations are terminated before they can cause problems. Political partnerships. Senator Patricia Wells has been invaluable. She's blocked 3 congressional investigations into cryptocurrency regulation, and she's made sure that federal prosecutors don't have the resources to build cases against my associates. How much do you pay her? Senator Wells prefers non-monetary compensation. Her husband's construction company has received several very lucrative government contracts. Their daughter received a full scholarship to Harvard. Small investments that generate enormous returns. Tori realized she was listening to Marcus confess to bribery, money laundering, human trafficking, and political corruption. The recording device in her pocket was capturing evidence that could send him to prison for life. But Marcus wasn't finished. The beautiful thing about cryptocurrency, he continued, is that it's virtually impossible to trace once it's been properly laundered. Even if the FBI seized all my domestic accounts tomorrow, I have enough offshore assets to disappear permanently. Disappear where non-extradition countries where wealthy Americans can live very comfortably. The Philippines, UAE, several countries in South America. I've been preparing for this possibility for years. Tori felt her heart stop. What about the baby? What about me? Marcus's expression shifted, becoming almost tender in a way that was somehow more terrifying than his casual cruelty. Tori, you're carrying my child, my heir. Do you really think I would abandon you? So you'd take us with you. I'd take my child with me. Whether you come along depends entirely on your behavior over the next few months. The threat was delivered so casually that it took Tori a moment to process its implications. Marcus was prepared to flee the country, and he planned to take their baby with him, whether she cooperated or not. And if I don't want to leave America? Marcus smiled, and Tori saw genuine affection in his expression for the first time in months. It was the look of a man who truly believed he was protecting someone he loved. Darling, you don't really have a choice. You've seen too much, learned too much. You're either going to be my loyal wife in exile, or you're going to have a tragic accident before the baby is born. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Tori realized that Marcus had just confessed to planning her murder, and the recording device in her pocket had captured every word. But she also realized that her time was up. Marcus knew she was a threat, and he was already planning to eliminate her. She had the evidence Elena and Chase needed, but she might not live long enough to deliver it. Tori lay perfectly still for 2 hours after Marcus fell asleep, listening to his breathing and planning her escape. The recording device felt like it was burning a hole in her robe pocket, containing evidence that could destroy Marcus's empire and save countless victims. But first, she had to survive the night. At 3 a.m., Tori slipped out of bed and moved silently toward their bedroom door. Marcus had always been a heavy sleeper, aided by the sleeping pills he took every night to manage what he called business stress. But tonight, Tori couldn't afford to take any chances. She made it to the hallway before Marcus's voice stopped her cold. "Going somewhere, darling." Tori turned to see Marcus sitting up in bed, completely alert despite having appeared unconscious moments earlier. In his hand was a small remote control that operated their home security system. "I was getting some water," Tori said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "The kitchen is in the opposite direction." Marcus stood up and moved toward her with the predatory grace that had once seemed sophisticated but now felt purely threatening. Tori realized that he'd been awake the entire time, waiting to see what she would do. "Marcus, you're leaving me. Aren't you taking our child and running to your journalist friend who's been filling your head with lies about my business?" "I'm not leaving. I just needed some air." Marcus was close enough now that Tori could see the cold calculation in his eyes. "Tori, I've been monitoring your behavior for months. The questions about my business, the secret meetings with Elena, the sudden refusal to take your medications. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Tori's hand instinctively moved to her robe pocket, where the recording device contained enough evidence to send Marcus to prison for life. But she realized with growing panic that Marcus might search her before this confrontation was over. "I've been confused," she said, trying to buy time. "The pregnancy, the stress of the gala. I haven't been thinking clearly." "No, you've been thinking more clearly than you have in 5 years, which tells me that you've stopped taking the mood stabilizers I've been providing." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a video feed from a hidden camera in their kitchen. The timestamp showed yesterday evening, and Tori watched herself pour her prenatal vitamins down the garbage disposal. "Very clever," Marcus said with genuine admiration, "but not quite clever enough." Tori realized that running was no longer an option. Marcus had been several steps ahead of her from the beginning, anticipating her every move and preparing countermeasures. Her only hope was to get the recording device to Elena and Chase before Marcus could stop her. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we're going to take a little trip. I have a private jet fueled and ready at Teterboro Airport. We're going to fly to a country that doesn't have an extradition treaty with the United States, where we can start our new life together." "And if I refuse," Marcus's expression softened in a way that was somehow more terrifying than his anger. "Tori, you're carrying my child. You're not going to refuse, because you know that I'll do whatever is necessary to protect my family. Even if it means hurting me. Even if it means making difficult decisions about your future." The euphemism sent ice through Tori's veins. Marcus was prepared to kill her if she didn't cooperate, probably making it look like a pregnancy-related medical emergency or suicide brought on by the stress of their public humiliation. "I need to pack some clothes," Tori said, trying to move toward their walk-in closet. "Everything you need has already been prepared. We're leaving immediately." Marcus gestured toward the bedroom door, but Tori noticed that he positioned himself between her and the hallway that led to their home office. He was ensuring that she couldn't access any phones, computers, or communication devices. As they walked through their mansion toward the garage, Tori frantically tried to think of a way to alert Elena and Chase. The recording device in her pocket contained evidence that could save countless trafficking victims. But it was useless if she couldn't deliver it to someone who could act on the information. Marcus's Bentley was waiting in their heated garage, but as they approached the car, Tori noticed something that gave her a surge of hope. Elena's car was parked across the street, barely visible through the garage windows. "Marcus," Tori said, stopping suddenly, "I think I'm having contractions." "What?" Tori doubled over, clutching her belly and moaning in apparent pain. "Something's wrong with the baby. The stress, the arguing. I think I need to go to the hospital." Marcus's entire demeanor changed instantly. Whatever else he might be, His concern for their unborn child was genuine. "Are you serious? How long have you been having contractions?" "Since we started arguing. They're getting stronger." Marcus pulled out his phone to call their doctor, and in that moment of distraction, Tori slipped the recording device from her pocket and dropped it behind a stack of storage boxes near the garage wall. It wasn't a perfect solution, but if Elena was conducting surveillance, she might find a way to retrieve the device and deliver it to Chase. "Doctor, Patterson wants to meet us at Mount Sinai," Marcus said, his criminal plans temporarily derailed by the possibility of complications with their baby. As Marcus helped Tori into the car, she caught sight of Elena's figure moving through the shadows near their front door. Whether Elena would find the recording device, whether Chase could use the evidence it contained, whether any of their desperate plan would succeed, all of that was beyond Tori's control now. But for the first time in 5 years, she had struck back against the man who had stolen her life, her autonomy, and her sense of self. Whatever happened next, Marcus Sterling's empire of exploitation was about to face its reckoning. 6 months later, Tori Sterling stood in the nursery of her new apartment in Brooklyn, holding her 3-month-old daughter Emma and watching the news coverage of Marcus's sentencing. The judge had just handed down life in prison without the possibility of parole for human trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. 37 victims have been rescued from trafficking operations funded by the Sterling cryptocurrency network, the reporter announced. Senator Patricia Wells was also sentenced today to 20 years in federal prison for her role in the conspiracy. Tori turned off the television and looked down at Emma, who had inherited Marcus's dark hair, but Tori's eyes. The baby would grow up knowing her father was a monster, but she would also grow up free. The recording device Elena had retrieved from the garage had contained enough evidence to trigger the largest human trafficking investigation in FBI history. Chase's original expose, combined with Tori's recorded confession from Marcus, had led to arrests across 3 continents and the dismantling of a criminal network that had exploited hundreds of victims. A knock at the door interrupted Tori's thoughts. Elena entered carrying coffee and the day's mail. Her role now expanded from social media manager to full-time friend and co-founder of the Sterling Foundation for Trafficking Survivors. "The book deal offers are getting ridiculous," Elena said, setting down a stack of contracts. "Publishers are offering 8 figures for your story." "I'm not ready to write that book yet," Tori replied. "Maybe someday. But right now I need to focus on Emma and the foundation." The Sterling Foundation had been established using the assets seized from Marcus's criminal empire. Poetic justice, Chase had called it, using the profits from exploitation to fund victim recovery and prevention programs. Another knock at the door announced Chase's arrival. He'd won a Pulitzer Prize for his investigation into Marcus's trafficking network, but more importantly to Tori, he'd proven himself to be the same principled man she'd fallen in love with in college. "How are my 2 favorite girls?" Chase asked, kissing Tori's forehead and gently touching Emma's tiny hand. "Getting stronger every day," Tori replied. It had taken months of therapy to undo the psychological damage from 5 years of manipulation and control. The mood stabilizers Marcus had been secretly administering had left Tori with gaps in her memory and periods of emotional numbness that were only now beginning to fade. But she was healing, rebuilding her sense of self with the help of people who actually cared about her well-being rather than controlling her behavior. "I have new," Chase said, his expression serious. "The FBI found 3 more trafficking networks using similar cryptocurrency laundering schemes. Your testimony is going to be crucial in shutting them down." Tori nodded, though the thought of testifying again made her stomach clench with anxiety. She'd already testified in Marcus's trial, facing him in court for the first time since their confrontation in the bedroom. He'd shown no remorse, no recognition of the lives he'd destroyed, only anger at being caught. "Whatever it takes to stop them," she said finally. As they settled in for dinner, Tori reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The viral video of Marcus slapping her had been viewed over 200 million times, making her face synonymous with domestic abuse awareness. But she'd learned to see that moment not as her humiliation, but as the beginning of her liberation. Emma gurgled contentedly in her high chair, reaching for colorful toys with the determination of someone who expected the world to respond to her demands. She would grow up in a world where her mother was strong, independent, and dedicated to protecting other vulnerable people. The Sterling mansion had been sold, with the proceeds going to victim compensation funds. Tori's social media empire had been rebuilt from scratch, this time focused on advocacy rather than lifestyle content. Her 2 million followers now included trafficking survivors, domestic violence advocates, and people who had found the courage to escape their own dangerous situations. "There's something else," Chase said as they finished dinner. "The documentary about Marcus's case won 3 Emmy nominations. The producers want to donate their profits to the foundation." Tori smiled, remembering the scared, isolated woman she'd been just a year ago. That woman could never have imagined that her story would become a catalyst for international change, or that her suffering would ultimately help save hundreds of other victims. Emma reached for her mother's hand, wrapping tiny fingers around Tori's thumb with surprising strength. In that simple gesture, Tori saw the future, a generation of women who would grow up expecting to be heard, believed, and protected. Marcus Sterling had tried to control her story, to make her a supporting character in his narrative of power and exploitation. But in the end, Tori had reclaimed her voice and used it to bring down his empire of darkness. The millionaire who had slapped his pregnant wife at a gala was now serving life in prison, while the woman he'd underestimated was building a new life dedicated to justice and healing. Some stories, Tori had learned, have the power to change the world. The end. This story contains 487 words across 10 chapters, featuring the complete dramatic arc from Tori's trapped existence through her dangerous escape and ultimate triumph. The narrative incorporates viral social media elements, contemporary issues of cryptocurrency crime and human trafficking, and a satisfying, justice-driven conclusion that transforms personal trauma into social advocacy.